The bullet wasn't meant for her. Zara Adaeze Okonkwo had been carrying a tray of pork belly skewers and cold soju when the back door of the Jade Serpent restaurant swung open, and the world outside decided to come inside, violently, loudly, and permanently. She dropped to the floor on instinct. The tray hit the tile a half-second before the second shot cracked through the kitchen window, and somewhere behind her, a man was screaming in a language she didn't speak. Glass rained down on her forearms. She pressed her cheek to the cold kitchen floor and stared at a single skewer that had landed 2 inches from her nose, still steaming. Then silence. Then footsteps. Slow, deliberate, like a man who owned the floor beneath his feet. Zara looked up and saw him for the first time. Seon Baekho stood 6 feet tall in a charcoal overcoat that probably cost more than her mother's car. He was 39 years old, though he looked ageless in the way that dangerous men sometimes do, like time had the good sense not to bother him. His jaw was sharp, his posture immaculate, and there was a thin scar above his left eyebrow that his barber had learned long ago to style around. He held no weapon. He didn't need to. The 4 men flanking him were weapon enough. He looked down at her. She looked up at him. For 3 full seconds, neither of them moved. Zara had lived in Koreatown, Los Angeles, for 6 years. She had waited tables at the Jade Serpent for 2 of those years, taking the late shift because it paid 30 cents more per hour, and she had a daughter in after-school care, and a mother with a bad knee and a rent increase that had arrived like a polite threat in the mail. She knew who Seon Baekho was the way anyone who worked in this part of the city knew. You heard the name before you understood what it meant, and by the time you understood what it meant, you knew better than to say it above a whisper. He was the head of the Baek Organization. He controlled narcotics distribution from Koreatown to the port of Long Beach. He had judges. He had councilmen. He had a reputation for being icily precise. No unnecessary deaths, no loose ends, no dramatics. The bodies that could be traced to him were few, which made the ones that couldn't be traced somehow more terrifying. He was not supposed to be in this kitchen. And she was not supposed to still be alive. "Stand up," he said. His English was excellent, clipped and clean, like a man who had worked very hard to remove all softness from it. Zara stood. Her hands were shaking. She pressed them against her apron. "You saw nothing," he said. It was not a question. It was not a threat. It was something stranger, a statement offered to her like a gift, telling her exactly how to survive the next 10 seconds. "I was just picking up skewers," she said. Her voice didn't shake. She was proud of that later. Something shifted in his expression, barely perceptible, like a shadow changing behind a closed window. He studied her for one more moment, then turned away and said something to the man on his left in rapid Korean. And just like that, he was gone. The cook, Jinho, appeared from behind the walk-in refrigerator where he had apparently spent the entire event crouched behind a 50-pound bag of rice flour. He was pale and sweating. He grabbed Zara's wrist. "You didn't see anything," he whispered. "And you don't ask me what happened. You go home. You come back Tuesday like normal." "What about?" "Go home, Zara." She went home. She sat on the edge of her daughter's bed and watched Amara sleep, her small chest rising and falling in the dark room, her braids fanned out across the pillow like something precious. Zara sat there for a long time, long enough for the shaking to stop, long enough to think. And that's when she noticed the envelope in her coat pocket. It hadn't been there before she went to work. It was thick, cream-colored, sealed. Her name was written on the front in handwriting so precise it looked like it had been drawn, not written. Inside was $10,000 in cash and a single handwritten line. "For your silence and your courage, S.B." Zara stared at it for a very long time. Then she made a decision that would, over the next 90 days, dismantle the Baek Organization from the inside out. She kept the money, and she kept her eyes wide open. Here is what Seon Baekho did not know about Zara Adaeze Okonkwo. She had a degree in forensic accounting from Howard University that she'd never used because the firm that hired her went bankrupt during her first month on the job. She had spent 3 years afterward working data entry for a logistics company, another year doing the books for a trucking operation in Compton, and eventually landed, through a sequence of bad luck and worse timing, in a restaurant apron. But the part of her brain that had sailed through fraud detection courses and money flow analysis seminars did not take a day off. It never had. She was, without any official credential to show for it, one of the best pattern recognizers she had ever met. And now she had 10,000 reasons to pay attention. She returned to the Jade Serpent on Tuesday. The kitchen had been scrubbed. The window had been replaced. Jinho said good morning without looking at her. Everything was normal in the aggressive, deliberate way that things are normal when someone has worked very hard to make them so. But Zara started looking. Not aggressively, not obviously. She was a waitress, invisible in the way that service workers are always invisible to the men who believe themselves important. She refilled water glasses and cleared plates and smiled, and all the while she catalogued. The Jade Serpent was not just a restaurant. Over the next 3 weeks, she mapped it quietly in her head. The private dining room on the second floor that was never on the reservation system. The delivery van that came every Thursday night, always between 11 and midnight, always driven by a man named Gwansu who tipped poorly and smelled like cigarettes and motor oil. The phone that Jinho kept in a locked drawer and answered only when a specific ringtone played. A ringtone that was set to a Korean folk song Zara later identified, after some patient internet searching, as a lullaby. She started writing things down, not at work. At home, after Amara was asleep, in a composition notebook she kept inside a hollowed-out copy of Their Eyes Were Watching God on the second shelf of her bookcase. On the 4th week, the man who changed everything walked through the door. His name was Detective Liam Teo Farrell. He was half Nigerian, half Irish, which gave him a face that people spent a moment too long trying to place, and he dressed like a man who had been buying the same brand of chinos for 15 years. He sat in Zara's section. He ordered the bibimbap and a water. He left a good tip. He also left his card. On the back, in small letters, "I think you know something. I think you're smart enough to know what to do with it." Zara turned the card over and over in her hands in the parking lot after her shift. Farrell had been investigating the Baek Organization for 22 months. He had a file cabinet full of suspicions and a prosecutor's office full of polite indifference. He had one confidential informant who had disappeared 9 months ago, not died, just disappeared, which was somehow more unsettling. He needed someone on the inside. He had no idea what was about to walk through his door. They met 3 days later at a laundromat in Silver Lake that Farrell used for exactly this purpose. Noisy, anonymous, and with a back exit onto a side street. Zara sat across from him with a copy of The Economist in her lap and slid him a folded piece of paper without preamble. He opened it. It was a hand-drawn financial flowchart. Clean lines, labeled boxes, arrows with annotated dollar figures, 3 different colored pens used to distinguish layers of transaction. Farrell looked up at her. "Where did you get this?" "I built it," she said. "From what I've observed over the past month, I'm missing the top layer. I don't have access to wherever the primary accounts are held, but everything below that I've reconstructed." He stared at the chart again. "You're a waitress." "I'm a forensic accountant who happens to currently be a waitress." She folded her hands in her lap. "And I want something in return." "What?" "Witness protection for me and my daughter, full relocation, and I want it in writing before I give you anything else." Farrell studied her. He had been a detective for 16 years. He knew the shape of desperation, and this wasn't it. This was calculation. This was a woman who had run the numbers and decided the risk was acceptable if the terms were right. "You understand who we're talking about," he said carefully. "I understand exactly who we're talking about." She paused. "I also understand that without me you have nothing. You've had nothing for almost 2 years." He looked back at the flowchart. She was right. Getting deeper into the Baek Organization's finances required Zara to do one thing she had hoped to avoid. She had to get noticed. Not by law enforcement, by Seon Baekho himself. The opportunity arrived in the form of a catastrophic accounting error. In her 5th week at the Jade Serpent, Zara overheard Jinho on the 2nd-floor landing arguing with a man she'd come to identify as Minkyu, the organization's local controller, a small, fidgety man with ink-stained fingers who ate lunch at the restaurant every Wednesday and always ordered the same soup. The argument, conducted in fast, pressured Korean, was not hard to interpret. Money was missing. Not stolen, miscategorized, lost in the layering phantom in the books. Zara knew exactly what had happened because she had seen the error being made. Gwansu, the delivery driver, had logged a Thursday night drop incorrectly, reversed 2-digit pairs in a transfer code, sending a paper trail into an account that dead-ended nowhere. She knew this because she had started, quietly and carefully, photographing the delivery manifests. She also knew how to fix it. The next Wednesday, when Minkyu sat down with his soup, she sat across from him. He blinked at her like she'd materialized from the air. "You have a transposition error in your logistics column," she said. "Account ending in 7741. Gwansu flipped a code. The real figure should be 119,400, not 114,900. You've probably been searching for the discrepancy all week." Minkyu put his spoon down very slowly. "Who are you?" "Someone who notices things." He stared at her for a long time. That Saturday, a car arrived outside her apartment building at 9 a.m. Black, tinted windows. The driver said nothing. He handed her a card with an address. Farrell nearly lost his mind when she told him. "You were supposed to stay invisible," he hissed. "Invisible doesn't get us the top layer," she said. "This does." The address was a glass office tower in downtown Los Angeles, 41st floor, with a view that made the city look small and manageable. Seon Baekho stood at the window with his back to her when she was shown in. He turned around after a moment. He recognized her immediately. She could tell by the way his expression moved, a brief, sharp recalibration, like a man who had just been handed a puzzle he hadn't known was a puzzle. "The waitress," he said. "The accountant," she replied. He sat. He gestured for her to sit. He said nothing for almost a full minute, which she had been warned about. Minkyu had told his assistant, who had told the man who drove her, that Mr. Baekho used silence as an instrument. She waited him out. "You found the error," he said finally. "I found 3 more while I was at it." Another silence. "Where did you study?" "Howard." Something passed across his face that she couldn't quite read. He laced his fingers together on the desk. "Why are you still a waitress?" "Bad timing, good memory." He looked at her the way he had looked at her on the kitchen floor 6 weeks ago, with that unsettling quality of attention, like a laser finding its focal point. "You're either very brave or very stupid." My mother always said those were the same thing. For the first time, she would remember this moment for the rest of her life. Seon Baekho smiled. It was small and brief and changed his face entirely, like a light switched on and immediately switched off. Then it was gone and he was stone again. "Come back Thursday," he said. "You'll meet with Minkyu, we'll discuss terms." She stood to leave. "Zara," he said. She turned. "Don't lie to me." It was the same tone he'd used in the kitchen, not a threat, a gift. She nodded once and left. She sat in the back of the black car and breathed very carefully for 3 blocks. Then she sent Farrell a single text. "I'm in." She worked for the Baek Organization for 41 days. Her official title, as far as any paper trail was concerned, was financial consultant for a shell company called Golden Gate Meridian LLC, which existed primarily to hold the lease on a storage facility in Wilmington and confuse anyone who looked at it too hard. She was paid in transfers to an account Farrell's team had set up. She went to the 41st floor 3 mornings a week. She built a complete picture of the organization's financial architecture in 22 days. It was, she had to admit to herself, brilliant. Seon Baekho had not built a traditional criminal empire. He had built something that looked, from every official angle, like an unusually diversified investment portfolio. The narcotics revenue was a small fraction of the whole. It was the seed money, the original engine. The real machine was real estate, restaurant groups, a private logistics company, and a minority stake in a mid-sized shipping firm with roots to Busan, Osaka, and Vancouver. The money didn't need to be laundered in the traditional sense. It was layered, diluted, and spun through enough legitimate velocity that by the time it appeared anywhere traceable, it was indistinguishable from clean capital. But it had a flaw. Every structure, no matter how sophisticated, has a keystone, a single load-bearing point that the architect believes is the last place anyone would look. Zara found it on day 31. It was a man named Chialsu Won. Chialsu was 63, semi-retired, and held a position on the board of a mid-sized community bank in Koreatown that had, over 16 years, quietly processed an estimated $340 million in structured deposits for the organization. He was the keystone. Pull Chialsu, and the entire financial history of the Baek Organization became visible. Transactions that had been invisible for a decade and a half suddenly lit up like a grid. She handed Farrell everything on a Thursday night in the Silver Lake laundromat. He sat very still for a long time after reading it. "This is enough," he said. "This is more than enough." "I know. We move next week. You and Amara need to be ready to go." She nodded, but there was something in her face that made him pause. "What?" he said. Zara folded her hands in her lap. She had been trying not to think about this for 11 days, and she was tired of trying. "He showed mercy to me," she said. "When he didn't have to, he could have." She stopped. "He's a criminal. I know what he's done. I know what that organization has cost people. I know." She paused again. "But he showed me mercy, and I want you to know that I know that." Farrell looked at her for a moment. "Does it change anything?" She thought of Amara asleep in her braids. She thought of the envelope with $10,000 and the line written in handwriting drawn like architecture. She thought of the way he'd said, "Don't lie to me," like it was the only honest thing he could offer a stranger. "No," she said. "Then we move next week." She went home. And Seon Baekho, sitting in his office on the 41st floor at 11 o'clock that same Thursday night, opened his laptop to a secondary communication channel that he trusted absolutely and found a single flagged message. He read it once. He sat very still. Then he pressed the intercom and said, "Get me Minkyu." The arrest warrants were signed on a Tuesday morning. By Tuesday afternoon, they were leaked. Not by Farrell, not by anyone in his department. The leak came from a paralegal at the U.S. Attorney's Office who owed a gambling debt to a man who owed a favor to the Baek Organization. And this is the kind of chain that people in Seon Baekho's position invest in precisely, because they are invisible until the moment they are not. By 3 p.m., Farrell was in Zara's apartment with 2 other agents, and the news that their timeline had just collapsed. "We have to move now," he said, "tonight." Zara was already packed. She had been packed for 4 days, a single duffel bag under her bed, Amara's favorite stuffed rabbit tucked at the top. She had told her mother she was taking a trip. She had said goodbye to nothing, because she had practiced saying goodbye to nothing for weeks. "What about Baekho?" she asked. "We'll get him," Farrell said. "The financial evidence doesn't evaporate. Even if he runs, we have the full architecture now. Chial Soo-won is already in custody." She nodded. Farrell touched her arm briefly. "You did something extraordinary." "I did something necessary," she said. At 4 p.m., she walked out of her apartment building with Amara holding her hand and 2 federal agents flanking them at a distance. The black car was parked across the street. She almost didn't look. But she did. Seon Baekho was standing beside the car. Alone, no bodyguards, no men in overcoats, just a man in a charcoal suit, his hands folded in front of him, watching her walk out. The agents moved toward him. He raised a hand. "I'm not here for her," he said. "I'm turning myself in." A silence landed on the street like something physical. Zara stopped walking. Amara pressed into her side. Baekho looked at her across the distance between them. There was no anger in his face. There was something far more complicated, something that looked almost like respect, or maybe like recognition, the way you recognize in another person a quality you've always privately valued and rarely found. "You're good," he said, not bitter, almost admiring. "You showed mercy to a stranger," she said. "I showed mercy back. This is what mine looked like." Something crossed his face, that brief shuttered light again. "My lawyer is already inside," he said to Farrell. Farrell stared at him. "You're cooperating." "I've been cooperating since Thursday night." He straightened his cuffs. "Your case against my organization is airtight, detective. I ran the numbers myself." A pause. "She taught me well." Zara felt something loosen in her chest that she hadn't known was bound. Baekho turned back to her one last time. His eyes moved to Amara, briefly, carefully, not unkindly, and then back to Zara's face. "There's an account," he said, "in your name. Howard University's endowment fund. Anonymous gift, fully clean, enough for a scholarship program." A pause. "For students who have better timing than you did." He walked toward the waiting agents without another word. Zara stood on the sidewalk for a long moment. Amara tugged her hand. "Mama, who was that?" Zara watched the agents lead him toward the waiting car. She thought about the kitchen floor, the envelope, the composition notebook inside the hollowed-out book on her shelf. 41 days, one empire, one decision made in a moment of unexpected mercy that had bloomed in both directions into something neither of them had planned. "Someone who made a choice," she said. "A good choice or a bad choice?" Zara picked her daughter up and held her. "Both," she said, "at the same time." 3 months later, Zara Okonkwo accepted a position as a senior investigator at the Financial Crimes Enforcement Division in Washington, D.C. The scholarship at Howard University was endowed by an anonymous donor. The first recipient was a girl from Koreatown who wanted to study forensic accounting. Her name was Zara too.
Thank you for watching. Every story leaves something behind. Fragmented Rain is where the next one begins. New stories every week. Please subscribe for more.